I know how disappointed you feel because I feel it too.
Every single American will have the opportunity to realize his or her fullest potential. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Hillary Clinton's concession speech Wednesday morning after Donald Trump's victory speech a few hours before, and we're back now with the panel. Well, there are a number of ways to look back at this stunning election and why Donald Trump won. Let's put a couple of them up on the screen. One is that the Trump base of working-class whites turned out big time. He carried them by 39 points this week as compared to Mitt Romney's 25-point margin 4 years ago. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton underperformed badly. Mr. Trump got fewer votes in winning that Romney got in losing, but Hillary Clinton got 5 million fewer votes than President Obama did in 2012. Chuck, how do you explain Trump's victory?
Well, I think the first thing I have to say is to admit that I didn't expect it, and that I've been trying to understand why I got this wrong and why so many others got wrong. And that leads me to my answer to your question, which is, like so many others, I didn't understand the surge in sentiment that was going on out there in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, et cetera. And what I think that is related to is that for many people, this was a vote, and it's been called a protest. I think that's too easy. It's more like a statement. It's more like an expression. It's more like a demand for validation from people who, as Mr. Trump has said, and I think we must defer to his judgment at this point, who felt forgotten and who felt that Washington was focused on the grievances of lots and lots of other people. You know, two groups form the core of the respective parties. African Americans form the core of the Democratic Party, the core of the core. Evangelical whites, the core of the Republicans. Each was presented with a very apocalyptic view of this election and told, turn out, or else you're doomed. And it turns out it was the white evangelicals who responded a little bit more than the African Americans, who I think showed less enthusiasm this time than they did for Obama, and I think that may have decided it.
Hillary Clinton had a different explanation for her defeat. She told big donors on a conference call this weekend that FBI Director Comey's 2 letters in the final days about her emails beat her, depressing her turnout and boosting Trump's. Julie, how do Democrats you talk to, what do they think was responsible for Clinton's defeat? And do they think that it was all about Comey?
No, they don't. Democrats certainly don't think that Comey's initial letter was helpful. If Clinton did have any momentum going into the final week, the Comey letter probably slowed it. I think it's also important, though, to point out that Clinton's own advisors, after the first Comey letter was sent, said that their polling had already tightened prior to that letter. So they were seeing something happening in this race before the Comey letter got sent out. Second point I would make is that if you look at Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, 3 states that Democrats have reliably relied on in presidential elections, and you look at her numbers there, it's really hard to say that a letter from the FBI director a week before the election was the driving force there. If you look at those numbers with white working class voters, many who voted for Barack Obama, she did not have a message for them. She never, in some cases, went to their state to even talk to them. So I think that this is becoming a crutch for the Clinton campaign, but for Democrats broadly, they see this as part of a much bigger problem, much more than what the FBI director did.
To Julie's point about this existence of a phenomenon that seems unfamiliar to people who didn't actually go and talk to these voters, the Obama-Trump voter is a real thing. Of the almost 700 counties across the country that voted for Barack Obama twice, Donald Trump won 209 of them. Of the counties that never voted for Obama, she won 6. This is a situation where you had a number of voters who made a decision, a rational decision, that after 8 years of Obama, they were dissatisfied with what they saw coming out of Washington, and they went to Donald Trump. And it's true, she didn't go to Wisconsin. She didn't go and speak to these voters. They spent more money chasing one electoral vote coming out of Nebraska than they did in terms of Wisconsin and Michigan over the course of the ending days of this campaign. And it's ludicrous to suggest that non-college educated whites in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, were going to be so dramatically motivated by what is essentially an inside the Beltway process story coming from the Comey letter, that really all it did was vindicate what people already knew about Hillary Clinton.
George, one of the things that and we've been around too long probably, we shouldn't tell people that. But one of the things I'm always amused by is at the end of a campaign, the winning campaign, they were all geniuses. The losing campaign, they were all dopes. The winning party, they're on the course to building a permanent majority in the country. The losing campaign is in tatters. How much of that is actually true?
Well, the losing party here is in tatters. The Republican Party is as strong as it's been since the 1920s and probably more. Broad and deep. 69 of 99 state legislative chambers are now controlled by the Republicans. 24 states, they have the Republican governor and the entire control of the legislature. Only 6 states have Democratic governors and Democratic legislatures. 34 Republican governors. That means if you're looking for a deeper bench for presidential candidates for the Democratic Party, you have to start with 16 governors is all they've got. Furthermore, 1/3 of the House caucus on the Democratic Party are from 3 states, Massachusetts, New York, and California.
Yeah, I saw that. That's astonishing.
They're in danger of becoming what the Republicans were thought to be in danger of becoming, a regional party.
But let me pursue this with you, because there was so much talk before the election, before election night, just before election night, about the Republican Party being in shambles and that there was this split between the establishment and the Cruz conservative Tea Party wing and the Trumpists. What happened to that?
They were united by Barack Obama. They were united by an agenda. Chuck said people felt forgotten by it. No, I think they felt condescended to. And there's something about progressivism that just is condescension. We know what your health care ought to be. Be quiet and take your medicine. We know how much water should come through your shower head. We know what kind of toilets you ought to have. We're going to change your light bulbs. Be quiet and take our direction. And people are tired of it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I'll take that as a friendly amendment, George. And I also think, just when we're talking about factors here, I think environmentalism, in a crucial way, worked against the Democratic Party this year. I did a little back-of-the-envelope calculation about the most coal-dependent states in terms of electricity generation in this country. There are 25 most dependent, 20 of them Trump carried. He carried Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which are the 3 most coal-dependent states in terms of electricity generation. That power plan, the focus on global warming and stuff, that he pushed with a relatively thin legal basis, might have provided the a part at least of the small margin that contributed to his defeat in those
There's a great irony in Bill Clinton ending his career arguing a lonely voice within the Clinton campaign that they need to pay attention to the needs and priorities of the white working class. He was the only one within that campaign structure who actually had that right, and they didn't listen to him.
And he was laughed at and
Yes.
ridiculed by a lot of people in the Clinton campaign who said
Is that really true?
Yeah.
I mean, I've read that, but
After the Wisconsin primary, when Bill Clinton wanted Hillary to spend more time there, they laughed at him.
no, go ahead. You can
No,
finish.
they laughed at him and basically said
They
he's
decided-
going after the voters that supported him instead of the ones that she'll need.
Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.